A pharaoh in the shadow of pyramids, Akhenaten. Let's watch the story of the revolutionary Akhenaten together. This is Luxor Temple in Egypt. The temple is the largest and most remarkable religious temple in the world ever built. The temple began as very old structure of unknown history in the city of Thebes. The center of the belief in God Amen, where the priest of Amen sang hymns every day saying that it was the greatest in heaven and the oldest in the world. Although its construction continued for more than 2,000 years, it was never completed. It is an enormous complex with 9-meter-thick walls and 20-meter-high columns. Most importantly, this was the headquarters of the god Amun-Ra. Amun was the king of all gods and Ra was the sun god. However, later in the process, he united to from Amun-Ra and became the central god of this temple. The interior is filled with labyrinths and private worship chambers that are kept secret from outside world and still haven't been fully uncovered. There is even a small city accessed by labyrinths and secret passages, where temple workers and the upper class live separately from society. It was both the reign center of the pharaohs and the temple of Amun, increased the power of the priests, it also caused them to influence the pharaoh. The religion of Amun-Ra was so strong that it is accepted by many authorities that the word Amen in Christianity and Amin in Islam came from Amen. The word Amen, which means observed or accepted, is a prayer-ending word that was first passed to the Hebrews in Egypt, and then to the Christians and Muslims. If you think about the effect that this power, which has influenced even the religions after it, on the pharaohs, we can understand that it is an inevitable end for a revolutionary leader to rebel against this authority. And that pharaoh would become Akhenaten, whose real name is the fourth Amenhotep. He was born in the mid-1300s BC. When he was a little boy, his father had brought Egypt to a glorious power, but there were some things that needed to change for Akhenaten. He was planning to get rid of all the confusion created by these gods and the influence of priests in the administration. In the 5th year of his reign, he came to Amonra from Thebes. His dream was to build a new city dedicated to his god. It was a dream of tremendous change. He had the following inscription written on the border of the city. No nobleman led me to this, no man in my lands led me to it, it was my father, the god Aton, who told me to build for him. This plan would literally change the ancient Egyptian kingdom. Thousands of people came to Amonra following Pharaoh, who was the absolute ruler and commandant, then began to build the city. They were all there to worship the god Aton, but that dream did not last long. 20 years after the new city was built, it was completely abandoned. So why? Aton, the god Akhenaten believed in, was not the god most of us believed in. He was the sun. Aton was already one of the gods in the Egyptian partition from ancient times and had been gaining popularity for a long time. Until then, the god Atum was seen as the visible, embodied form of the god Ra. He was now ahead of Ra and the other gods. One of the eulogies that Akhenaten wrote to the sun, whom he saw as a god. Even though you are far away, your rays on earth. Even though you are on people's faces, your effects are invisible. According to Akhenaten, since the sun visible from everywhere, all the people had to survey it. Another hymn he wrote to the sun is how beautiful it is that you appear on the horizon of the sky. Aton, who lives the essence of life. When you are born on the eastern horizon, you fill the whole country with your beauty. In addition, Akhenaten had a gigantic temple built for the god Atum in the city of Amonra. This temple was built with a very different architecture from the ones in all Egypt, because it was open. And the rays of Aton, that is, the sun, should have come here. There were more than 100 altar stones in the temple, as can be clearly seen in the depictions found and the remains of the temple. Hundreds of tons of meat, fruit, vegetables, wine were placed on these altar stones every morning with the sunrise, accompanied by chants, and the sacred lights of the sun decomposed these foods and took their essence. Although archaeologists think that in a city where such a huge amount of food was offered to God, its people lived in prosperity and abundance, the bones unearthed in the city of Amonra show us how a terrible despotism turned the nightmare into reality. In this city dedicated to the god Aton, the more important function of food than meeting human needs was its presentation to Aton. Starvation-induced anemia and deficient physical development were revealed in almost all bones found. Although these people lived in the new capital of Egypt, they were left to an enormous starvation by Pharaoh Akhenaten. Also, the workers employed by Pharaoh to build the city were the most dramatic workers in all of Egyptian history. Analyses of bones discovered at least 5 times more trauma than in all of Egypt in the bodies of workers who were not even 18 years old. With this pressure, hunger and torture, the belief in Aton, the god of the pharaoh, and the excitement brought about by the revolution began to lose its effect, and the city began to be abandoned. In any case, worshipping Aton could only be done through Akhenaten. Akhenaten elevated himself and his wife, Nefertiti, to the rank of gods in this context. He had his own statues made in the temples and ensured that he was worshipped personally. He saw himself as the son of God and often expressed this in his poems and hieroglyphs. In the 17th year of his reign, Amonra was now an abandoned city, far from all the dreams of Pharaoh. Akhenaten died suspiciously in 1332 BC according to his will. He was embalmed and buried in a temple dedicated to Aton. Shortly after his death, his mummy was removed from his sarcophagus by his rivals and taken to a place no one knew about and disappeared. We may never know where his mummified body is. There is another person after him that we lost track of. Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, one of Egypt's most powerful and mysterious women. The meaning of the name is the arrival of beauty. In hieroglyphs written on her behalf, her beautiful face is described as the Lady of Happiness and the first wife of Pharaoh. It is unknown what happened to Nefertiti, under which hot sands of Egypt her body lay in eternity sleep. According to a theory, her tomb was found in the Valley of the Kings and she was killed by hitting her head with a hard object. However, we do not have any definite information yet. It continues to be explored along with various theories, but an artifact of interest to her would become the symbol of all women of ancient history. This is the bust of Nefertiti, currently on display in Berlin. Around the time of Akhenaten's death, even many members of the royal family had begun to return to the faith of Amonra. In fact, his son, who became pharaoh shortly after Akhenaten, is the child king. It is named Tutankhamun, meaning the living image of Tut-Amun. Tutankhamun restored Amun-Ra temples and brought about a return to the old religious belief. After the conversion to the old religion, he was declared a hero by the people and Akhenaten was declared the enemy of Egypt forever. Apart from Akhenaten's despotic character and belief that was unusual for his time, art reached its peak in Egypt during his reign. Realism was applied in the statues of himself and the previous pharaohs that he had made. In this way, the appearance of some of the Egyptian pharaohs could be understood more clearly. Especially when looked at his statue, it was determined that his limbs looked different from normal and he had congenital health problems. It is thought that these health problems were caused by the Egyptian dynasty's preference for sister marriages in order not to spoil the holy blood. And the story of a pharaoh was lost under the Egyptian pyramids. History has told us what great people did. It doesn't matter what they believe in, whether they are a good person or not. Akhenaten was one of them. A despot, a dictator, a sun worshipper, but he is a man who has not stopped fighting for his dreams and goals. If we listen to the story of a man who lived thousands of years ago and we want to speculate about him, we should know that he is a man who deserves to be respected. In the palace where he grew up since his childhood, a single religion was imposed, but we should respect him because he is a man who rebels against this religion. This applies to all faiths. It is valid for all ideas that want to make people accept themselves by pressure. I hope you had an enjoyable time. Your support is important to us. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.